What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this edition of Afterthoughts, recapping UFC Busan, headlined by Frankie Edgar and the Korean Zombie in a fight that went pretty much the way I expected it to. I did not give Frankie much of a chance in that fight. Now, I know Frankie, he's very tough and he's durable and he's always a hard guy to put away. But when I looked at this fight on paper, short notice, Korean Zombie with a lot of momentum. I didn't know the size differential was as big as it was, but I mean, quite the size differential. Frankie could not control the action at any point in this fight. I think Frankie's been figured out a lot. I think people now know what his whole MO is, which is, that double jab, overhand, and then shoots for the takedown. That's pretty much everything Frankie Edgar does in a nutshell. And Korean Zombie was just able to read him well. Korean Zombie, obviously an outstanding performance by him getting the finish. When I watch that fight and I watch his previous performances, I'd be more interested in seeing him fight Alexander Volkanovski than seeing Max Holloway get a rematch, because number one, it's a fresh matchup. Okay, it's a matchup we haven't seen before. Number two, it's a matchup of two guys who always move forward. It's a matchup of two guys who are stylistically pretty similar, although they have enough differences to make it interesting. And it's a matchup that I think will really be massive in the Asia-Oceania region. Like, you could headline a pay-per-view in Australia or in Asia with that. That's a massive pay-per-view in that part of the world. I'm far more interested in that fight because it's a fresh matchup. It would be a lot of excitement as well. I mean, it'd be really cool to see how the Korean Zombie would handle Volkanovski's pressure, especially just coming off of a win against somebody who stylistically is similar but not as dynamic in Frankie Edgar. And, I didn't get to do a video afterthoughts for UFC 245, unfortunately, but I would have mentioned this in that edition, which is there's nothing really to convince me that Max Holloway would do any differently against Volkanovski at this point in time. Now I know he was a long-reigning champion, but again, I think when a fight's pretty decisive, and that one was, I gave 4 rounds to Volkanovski, one judge gave him 5. I really think there's no reason to do a rematch after something like that. I would understand why the UFC would do it, but I think the Korean Zombie would be a better matchup at this point in time. Moving on to the co-main event, Volkan Oezdemir and Alexander RAKIC. I disagree with the decision. I think RAKIC beat him. I'm not going to call it a robbery because it was a close enough fight to where I could see it going for Oezdemir. I don't really know what to make of Volkan Oezdemir. I don't think he's going to beat Jon Jones. I don't think he's a legitimate title contender at 205. I still think RAKIC is, although this fight, he needs a lot of work on his cardio, needs a lot of work on his defensive grappling, among other things. When I look at Oezdemir, I don't really... I see him as a guy who's always going to be really tough to beat, but I don't see him as a guy who's going to be a title contender. I see him as being the ultimate gatekeeper. You beat him, you've earned your shot. Maybe earn your shot at the title, but definitely earned your shot at the top 5. When I look at a guy, but like with RAKIC, what really gets me with RAKIC is, he's a guy who's been hyped up for so long. People are saying, well, he's going to be the one to beat Jon Jones. He's the one with the length. He's the one with the power. He's the one that does have, when he's able to get takedowns, he's able to control guys with them. And this was the first real test he had. He fought a guy in Devin Clark and then, Jimmy Manuwa after that. Two guys who are very one-dimensional. Clark is a great wrestler. Nothing more than that, though. Not a great striker. And Manuwa vice versa. He's a great striker, but no defensive grappling whatsoever. No really defense whatsoever. This was his first real test against a well-rounded fighter, and he almost passed it, but he didn't. And I think moving forward for him, they're going to give him somebody who will present similar challenges to Oezdemir. Like, I could see him fighting maybe a guy like Ovince St. Preux next. Might be interesting. Someone who's going to really mix it up, really going to test RAKIC, but somebody who he will be favored against, and somebody who he can build his confidence off of. And then I'm going to close this out with Charles Air Jourdain and Doo-Ho Choi. That was a good fight. It was a fun fight. Jourdain did win, obviously. He won decisively. I'm not taking anything away from him. But the first thing I saw the first reactions I saw from the win was that, oh, well, Charles Jourdain is so much, he's so good. His footwork is so crisp. He's quick. He can, he could finish guys with his hands and with his feet. I look at that fight and I think to myself, he fought a guy off of a 2-year layoff, a guy who really has one weapon, which is his hands. I've never been as high on Duo Choi as so many others have. I've always respected him. I always thought he was a great fighter. He's always put on great fights, but I've never really been sold on him being that, next contender that so many were pining him as when he, prior to that Cub Swanson fight. He's now lost 3 in a row. Charles Jourdain looked good, but, don't oversell him just yet just because he got a win over a guy who probably wasn't even training full time, a guy who hasn't fought in almost 2 years, and a guy who's got one method of attack. Jourdain's good, but he's not really going to be a big name moving forward. At least it doesn't appear he will be. Now, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe he could go in there, fight another contender, and come away looking even more impressive, but I'm not going to oversell it just because of one performance. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this edition of Afterthoughts. My name's Johann Castro. This was the last Afterthoughts of the year. It's bittersweet, but we'll be back next year for UFC 246, Connor and Cowboy. Great first card of the year. Join me then, and I'll see you guys later.